trading network that existed thousands of years ago. And the women remains placed it at between 1850 1700 BC.
Oh, wow.
So it's quite the oldest bit of gold they found in that area.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's definitely a treasure.
Let's see. Oh, there it is. Whoops, where'd it go? Whoop, gone. Push the wrong thing and it disappears. Sorry about that. There it is. Don't know if it shows up on there. Well, if it shows up, I'll put it up there. Oh, dear. It's gone. Like so many things. There you go.
It's okay. Thank you, Pat. Richard, any news this week?
No, not really.
No, that's fine.
No, just hunting for stuff for Carl. So.
Ooh, he's got you working then.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you wrote. Did you write that article in the paper, in the newsletter?
Oh yeah.
Who's making that noise?
Not me.
Can you hear that?
Yeah. Is it Carl?
Probably.
Oh God. I've
just being annoying. It's just being annoying as usual.
I've just been
tends to make strange noises.
well, I'm reading a book about sort of like the care system in Ireland, in the for, like the Magdalene laundries and all the horrible sort of.
Yeah. Have you watched the film on that, Anne?
Yeah, I mean, I watched the the drama. Yeah, that was good, but this goes right back to like 17th century.
Yeah, it's quite sad that there's no apology made for it.
Yeah, it's times change.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I don't know what made me pick it up. It was there. I went into the Bridge Library and it was just sort of there, so I picked it up.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that I would be interested in.
Relevant,
Yeah, the film was very heartbreaking. It was based on true stories, though.
Yeah. This is all true stories as well. It's called Shame. It's called Shame. So it was all about shame of the, unmarried mother, really.
Yeah.
And but I mean, it happened in this country as well. It wasn't just Ireland.
I think Ireland's laundries. For anyone that doesn't know, it was unmarried women who were pregnant sent there. Some women that were sent there weren't pregnant. It was just vanity, for example, being the reason why they were sent there. And they were made to sort of live there and clean, and they had a laundrette, and that's where they had to work, and it was terrible conditions, and it was by the Catholic Church. I think the one in Ireland, the one the film's based on, it went up right until the 90s, which is very heartbreaking. A very good film. I felt like.
It was just this realization that so many babies died, and they were just like, how did they die? And
there's the gold.
Thank you, Pat. I did see that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Southwest Germany, gold from Cornwall. There you go.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you, Pat. It's perfectly preserved as well. Yeah, definitely something that I would keep.
But I mean, it is to do with archaeology, because they put the children in a cistern in the ground, just in a bog, is sort of. Anyway, but
all thanks to bloody religion.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was. Yeah. Oh, do you know you could go to prison for kissing someone in public as well in Ireland? In the 1930s.
In the name of religion.
Yeah. Terrible.
Yeah, thank you, Anne, for that. Yeah, it is very good. It's very heartbreaking that these women went through, and it goes up there with one of my other favourite films is I've forgotten the name, Angela's Ashes.
Oh yes, I love those. I love those.
Yeah, and the book.
you know, my brother thought his childhood was like that.
Yeah, so it's very heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Religion, an important part of the story, but definitely ones that I think are amazing to tell those stories and have, especially with the Magdalene laundries, to have people's voices remembered and their experiences. It's important to historians to know the full perspective of it all as well. And like you said, Anne, you can bring up a very dark side of archaeology with that as well. I'll get into it now. Part of this is it ties in a little bit to what I've been researching lately with my thesis, and some of it isn't. So it's a bit of a mixture today. Just one of them is something that I just wanted to have focus on, and the other one is something that I'm focusing a lot on. But I put medieval shipwrecks. We're only looking at two, but I think possibly this could be like a really good series maybe to have, look at different shipwrecks and what that can tell us about connections with other cultures and trade. And I am going to chuck a little bit of religious beliefs in it as well, because it's something that I have found quite interesting from my research as well to mention. So we've done shipwrecks with Karl before. The Sinan shipwreck was a medieval one that I thought was amazing because the stuff literally looks like it was made yesterday. But from those lectures and discussions that we've had, we have all found the shipwrecks are a very important indication of trade and connections with other cultures, and how that is a livelihood to a lot of settlements, especially closer to the coast or rivers. And underwater archaeology is something that is amazing because it can produce these amazing artifacts for us to look at, but it can be very dangerous as well and very difficult to excavate. So that's some of the things that hinder archaeologists today with investigating such things. But I think this is a sort of type of archaeology that doesn't really get as much attention as it deserves, because I find that shipwrecks, underwater archaeology, etc., is amazing because it can tell us so much, not just about trade, but of the life of those who lived on the boat and what they brought to other cultures and settlements. And it also shows how it can shape identity. I think that trade is a big factor in shaping coastal settlement identities, for example, and you can tell how each culture in terms of trade embraces this diversity. And that's something that I've been focusing on a lot with my dissertation. I'm looking at medieval Welsh trade. And one thing that I keep pointing at is the fact that everyone should have an interest in Welsh history and Welsh trade, because it isn't just Welsh history, but it's history of other cultures, other people, other countries, because we're all having this interaction through trade and we're all affected each other as well through trade. And I think shipwrecks are important because they can give us that rich evidence of archaeology and through material culture that can tell us so much more than what we know from the document. And they can tell us a lot about the trade routes and what it was like to trade and get the trades from different countries. It can tell us so much, especially the rivers and the oceans that they're found in. And I think it's something of an importance to many historians and archaeologists to look at, because this can paint a bigger picture. Like I said, documentary evidence can be very helpful, but sometimes it cannot tell us the full thing. And especially what I have found looking at just documents in terms of economy and looking at other documents showing links cannot be enough sometimes. And the pottery and the different types of glass or coins, etc., that have been found from shipwrecks as well can tell us so much more about what we saw in our industry and what we imported and exported, and how that has shaped the coastal settlements' identity, what they identify themselves as. And in my eyes, I think diversity was something that was embraced greatly, because it was their livelihood. Connecting with different types of people was their livelihood. And you find a lot of evidence from the later medieval period. I think, again, is another discussion we have. The earlier medieval period can be quite problematic because there isn't a lot of archaeology being produced from that period yet, which is very frustrating. But I think enough people like myself and Karl that wants to make more attention towards early medieval archaeology, we could get a better picture. But that's part of my thesis. For example, I'm going from the early medieval to the later and just seeing how trade has developed throughout time at South Wales coastal settlements as well. And something that I have found is that Wales, for example, has got such a rich history in terms of trade and who we've connected with, and I don't think Wales should be dismissed completely at all. I got asked a question on why Wales, basically along the lines of Wales didn't really have trade. They just took any trade that they had from the English, and that was that, because it was almost like we were incapable of having our own industry, having our own connections, which was very frustrating. And one thing that is quite interesting to see with all of this is how how Wales isn't that backward country that didn't have his own trade. Wales was, I think, they weren't getting pottery from France, for example, or the Mediterranean from the English. I do think that they were having attraction towards Wales as well. And that's something that I aim to point out, but it's going to be something of a challenge, and a good challenge. But today we're just going to look at the two ships from the later medieval period, two completely different areas. One's Welsh and the other one's here in a Dutch river. And they had found 3 shipwrecks here. There is only one shipwreck that I'm going to discuss, but the 3 shipwrecks in itself are important for one of the theories that I am going to present to you. And they had a very difficult and ambitious task to go here and find this shipwreck, because it was just a nightmare to get out in one piece without it completely damaging all the archaeology. But the ship that was here was 6,000 years old and is near Kampen in Netherlands. So it's in pristine condition, and it even had an intact brick oven inside as well. This ship was described as a fantastic achievement for the team, and it was said to bring us closer to knowing this rich trade of the area, knowing how the Black Sea trade panned out thanks to this river as well. And they discovered this ship in 2012 and had it lifted in the same year as well. And it seemed to be something that was treasured by everyone in the local area, because they really went hard into preserving this as well. And it's something that we're going to discuss with, because preserving shipwrecks can be part of the difficult task of it all. So it's not just getting it out and that's it. You've got to preserve it and ensure that it doesn't deteriorate as well throughout time. But the ship itself is a 15th century trading ship, and this is how they were able to get it out. They were able to use a crane to lift it up by straps and just get it out. That was the one thing that they were interested in. And it was wooden, it was made out of timber, and it was a flat bottom ship as well. And this was something of great importance, because it was also found with a river barge, a punt and a vessel for navigating river deltas. And archaeologists were a bit puzzled how in this one specific area they were having so much, especially 3 ships were found there. And they were just completely submerged, and a lot of them didn't really have much cargo either. But this was something that was really important, because this is having quite an interesting abnormality in terms of how they find shipwrecks. You normally just find one on his own with lots of cargo. This one had some stuff on there, but not what we would expect it to have, like such ships like Sanan. And this was this had a characteristic construction that's found in a medieval ship called a cog. And these features included a length to width ratio, the straight prow and stern, and the deck beams that jut out through the outer skin of the ship. The large ship that we're seeing here was put into these frigid waters about 600 years ago and was left for us to find again. But the cog is what's interesting because it's perfectly preserved. It's almost stunning to look at. And they were using chalking to seal the ship, and many of the nails on the ship were found as well, which is amazing. But the metal support structures is what held the ship together. Without that, this ship would have just been in lots of pieces. So we have to thank the nails, really, that didn't collapse into and let this all be a pile of wood. But it was lifted from the water successfully, and that was the next part of their job, really, was to get this analysed, to get this preserved, and to get this in a great shape so the public can enjoy as well. And they don't understand, archaeologists don't understand, they don't know why the cog wound up at the bottom of the river. One possibility is something that we're going to come to, is that it's sunk on purpose, along with the two other vessels. And there was, in the 1500s, the river was filling with silt, and it was creating large sandbanks, which prevented ships from making port as well. So I'm going to just leave that as a little hint, maybe, to why it was deliberately sunk, and we'll go back to it. But it was a large ship. It was 65 feet in length and 26 feet wide, and it weighed a whopping 55 tons. And it was stripped of much of his original glory, but the team did find anchors and certain other things as artifacts that can tell us about the life of people here, and a metal structure as well, designed to hold ropes that supported the ship's mast was found as well. And this is part of their recovering of the ship. So what they first had to do to remove the ship, because this was such a big task, was to create a platform all around the ship and lift it out that way with a crane, again, like I said, with straps. And part of the issue was that some of it was under a lot of sand because of the way that it's just been there for so long, and sand had just sort of been blown over. This is part of a river where the waters can go a little bit crazy as well. So it's only natural that sand was being thrown all around, all over the place, and settled in the boat. But this is a 3D reconstruction that we have on the bottom image of what they did there. And it does seem very advanced and very difficult, but definitely something to keep an eye out with. And the archaeologists have put the ship in a pontoon, which is like a protective case to keep the ship, but they also, to dry it as well, they're going through this process where they're trying to keep it cool. So they have these wet and dry stations to keep the ship wet at all times by a climate control system. And eventually they hope that 3 years, so that would have been 2015, I couldn't find anything about whether they were successful in this, but it's said to take the ship 3 years to be dried out and ready for public viewing. So if that's gone to plan, it should have already been done, and something that's enjoyed by everyone. Like I said, when it comes to the archaeology of shipwrecks, I think it's something that's very welcomed by people, because they're celebrating their connections with other people. It's not a very exclusive archaeology, it's a very inclusive archaeology in my eyes, and I think it can really show how advanced a settlement can be in the medieval period, to have these connections with people. They're clearly having rich trade to be drawing the attention of people. And so we're going to talk about what was found in the cog, because that was just amazing. And what we're seeing here is one of the brick tiles that they had, this brick oven. But this has produced a lot of things from there, such as an ancient gallery that had glazed brick tiles for a brick oven that was there. And they even found things in terms of pilgrims as well. But what's interesting about these brick tiles is that they're traditional Dutch, known as excuse my pronunciation here, but I'm going to give it a go. So it's a kloster moppen, which.
It's a cluster muffin.
Come on, Bill, is that how it's said, or is it said another way?
Oh, I guess that in Dutch it's a cluster hoppen.
Oh, thank you. I think I was along the right line. So thank you so much, Bill. But this dates to the 13th century. So it's a lot earlier than the other ship that I'm going to discuss. But I think that's amazing because that is still a lot earlier than some of the shipwrecks, etc., that are being discussed. And what I think is amazing about these tiles is that it's showing obviously it's from the area. And it's showing how there's got other things in there, such as 2 pilgrim badges that was found there as well, which we'll have a look at. But they were a very important part of it for me. They even found a willow twig fish trap, a water pump as well. And what people were arguing in terms of this theory of what happened to it, they were saying, well, these things can be discarded without a thought. So maybe the cog went down by accident or by purpose, because it just seems like you wouldn't have these things on the ship if it was to go down on purpose, especially with these brick tiles as well. And the oven, but the ship was in good condition and was able to lead the team to a lot of artifacts as well. And the next image is these 2 pilgrim badges that were found on the vessel. Now, something that has led me to some of my discussion with my thesis is that I've said that maybe we'll have a little focus on religious sites on the coast, for example, because maybe pilgrimages brought trade along with them, and so having something like this isn't just as plain as telling us the religion and the beliefs of anyone that was on the ship, but I think it also tells us how this is an important part to play in terms of trade. I was looking at Pembroke, for example. I found a lot of evidence in terms of trade with the Mediterranean and with England and Ireland, and how there's a pilgrimage site there. And in my eyes, I felt like pilgrimage is part of trade because it's bringing people to the area and they might bring stuff with them. And so that gives a settlement an incentive to want to develop with their industry and bring more people over to, not just for pilgrimage, but look at all these amazing things you could buy. So that was my logic in terms of it, and that's why I felt like this was important as well, because maybe religion is something that's tied in, whether it's for good luck, and that could be another part of it, or whether it could be an indication of people's incentives of not just trade, but to connect with other cultures through beliefs. And this is an icon of Kampen's independent trade, and it is discussed a lot to be in the Hanseatic League as well in history. And we know anyway that this area had a lot of trade, but this shipwreck is solidifying that belief as well. And the lead maritime archaeologist, Wouter Waldus, had said in a statement, and this direct quote that I've put on the screen is, "The shipwreck can become a symbol of our rich maritime history, and I fully expect many people, both young and old, to be amazed by and start enjoying this ship from the Hanseatic period's fascinating story." And what's significant about this ship is that it tells us about that trade and how it shows that this was a large ship, and to have a large ship, you're going to have a lot of trade for this. And so it highlighted to archaeologists and historians that this complemented what they had read through documentary evidence that this was a place with a lot of trade. In terms of the pilgrimage badges, the pilgrim badges as well, like I said, they could have been something for luck and for beliefs as they went along. But I also think that, again, if this was beliefs that was held by people, then they possibly would have been drawn to the coastal areas that had a lot of pilgrimages going along. But in terms of trade, I think that they're just connected. People are interested in not just trade, but also having that spiritual salvation that comes along with it if they visit the area, and why not? So to me, that it just seems to be a link that seems to pop up with some places as well. Now we're going to go to the fate of the ship, which is quite an infuriating one because we've got no conclusive evidence. And 1 minute I was listening to one side and I was like, oh, that's quite good. And then I was listening to the other side and I was like, oh, that's quite good as well. And you get a little bit confused. But some archaeologists at first believe that this was sunk on purpose by the maritime traders 600 years ago to alter the flow of the river. And the reason why they felt like they needed to do that was because the water levels of the river was going down a little bit lower, a little bit more shallow, and the cargo ships to access the river was becoming a lot more difficult. And so the solution to that was to sink some large ships, especially this one, and the two other ships as well, to ensure that the water levels had gone up a little bit. There was some sort of plausible argument with that, but at the same time, I really can't see why that would happen, especially with some of the things that they had found on there. So they said that with the evidence with the other ships and just how there was no cargo, that this was the case. This is what they were trying to do. However, some archaeologists have argued that the ship had sunk by accident because some of the things on there had they said some things had no value. This is how they hit back at this. Some of the things on there had no value to anyone else, and that this was something that would have gone purposely down with the ship because they didn't see the importance. But in my eyes, I just don't understand how some things would have been left there. Like I said, the fish traps and the oven as well, the brick oven as well. I can't see how that would just be something that's easy to just chuck on there and just go down. They could have possibly had more use, and especially with the Pilgrim badges. I think in terms of this, that they've done a lot of observation and analysation in terms of this with the dendrochronology, but I think they're at the beginning of the story of this ship and we need to find out more. Like I said, the waters is argued there to be quite treacherous, and sometimes people believe that the ships could have possibly sunk down. But again, what's not right is the fact that there's not a lot of cargo there. And then someone argued was that was because the ship is from there. Was it maybe something that was an accident and they didn't really expect it to happen? Again, it just seems to be something that has a lot of question marks about it. And if anyone watches the BuzzFeed Unsolved series, they would just basically just turn around and say, well, this is something that's unsolved, and you feel very annoyed because they haven't really gone any further. But there's a lot of people that said that if this was to be purposely sunk, there wouldn't have been anything that was on the vessel. There would just be something that was stripped completely. And for some people, they just feel like, especially the brick tiles, they're just the biggest clue to say that this was an accident. And like I said, the fish traps, it just doesn't make sense. But some people have argued that this is something that could be discarded without a thought, and some people have said that they couldn't have been discarded without a thought. So it's very confusing on whether it was an accident or on purpose. So the next one that we're going to go to is Newport Ship. I'm sure some of you are familiar with. This is something that really fascinated me as a child, because I went and I've got a magazine that I had from 2006, so I was about 7, I think, and I just remember being amazed.
T-shirt.
Pardon, Anne?
My daughter had the T-shirt.
Oh, that's amazing. I think I had a few things, but I can't seem to find it. The only thing that I have is
well, she
the
was,
newsletter.
about 13 then, I think, you know, like
Yeah.
that sort of age. Bit older, maybe 15 even, I don't know.
Yeah. It's honestly, it's a great thing, isn't it? And to go to.
It was exciting. That's what I was going to say about Newport Ship. I mean, until Newport Ship, I mean, I didn't really take much notice of the castle because I got the feeling that everyone said, oh, the town didn't really, the town was Victorian, you know, and the big city it is now, you know, and I thought, oh, right, oh, there was nothing there then, you know.
Yeah.
But of course, there must have been ports, and the castle was actually, you know, the port and the dock really being used, and the castle. So yeah, it's
I think that's one thing that's quite frustrating, because when you look at for example, just a quick sort of basic reading, and there's something that I always do with my research. I start off basic and then I go really advanced with it. So to get the basic understanding, I just type it in on Google and see what Wikipedia tells me. And Wikipedia was quite disappointing, really, because they didn't mention Wales once, even though this is found in Wales. And it was found in 2002. And it was a mid-15th century sailing vessel that was found in Newport in southeast Wales. And it was found on the west bank of the River Usk, which runs through the city centre during the building of the Riverfront Art Centre. And in the process of trying to get this out, it did have a lot of damage to it, which it hindered it, but I think they've tried to preserve it as best as they could. When I was a child and I went, I want to go again because it's been so long, but I just remember seeing all these tanks with all bits of timber and then the little fish looking at, you know, swimming about, and I just thought it was amazing to look at. It really blew my head as a child, especially being so teeny tiny and having this big room with big tanks of this amazing ship. And since then, they've obviously done reconstructions. They've had more discussion about it. And it was quite interesting to look at this newsletter that I had from 2006 and compare it to the current research that they've discussed about it and the interpretations. It shows that it's changed over time, which I like that. I like to see development in archaeology and history in terms of discussions and what it tells us. And for my thesis, this is going to be the final thing that I close on. So I set that as I really wanted to get this in.
Good.
And go on, Anne.
Yeah, good, because I mean, I saw it in situ, you know, when it was in the by the side of the Usk, you know, and it was fantastic.
Yeah,
and I'm very interested to see what, you know, what they're doing now with the centre and everything, and you know, it is interesting, but we keep forgetting about it.
yeah, that was quite interesting, because I was talking about it with my lecturer, and he said his wife had worked on helping this all go out nicely, which is quite interesting, which then I started panicking because I thought, does he know more than me? Am I going to make myself look like a fool? But it seemed like we were both on the same level of what we knew, and we thought this was just a perfect thing to end it all, because I think this ship has shown us how it is developed throughout time, how this ship has shown Wales to be on the map in terms of trade and have an importance here. I think that's why I was frustrated in terms of saying Wikipedia saying this was showing us Britain's trade. It can do, but it was found in Wales, and in my eyes, that's connection of trade with Wales, and not Britain. But this is what I'm saying, because a lot of people are sat there saying, well, there's not much about trade. I read this book, and this is what I started my preliminary research on, is the Times Medieval World. It's a nice book, and I was looking through it, and on page 98 they have the world map, well, the world mapped out with all the trade of the world, and you can see all the trade links and all the places that are marked out. And I looked closer at Wales and there was nothing at all. And I literally just slammed the book closed, and I thought, right, you're going in there and I'm going to, you know, dob you into being rubbish. But that's my aim. I just want to see more discussion of that, and it seems like this is something that has not really been discussed much. It has been, obviously, by the Friends of Newport Ship. It's something that they've seen an importance with, but it's getting their voices heard, really, to get the attention out there. So
you know, the Shipwreck book that we watched, we've recently read, you know, the one Carl's published, that is fascinating. It's fascinating about the Bristol Channel, you know, and how we ship routes went to Pembroke and even went to Ireland from there, you know, and there's much more to Wales than people think, you know. And I think you have got to look at the water. You've got to look at the sea, you know, for trade.
Yeah, I think sometimes I wish that if someone could just pump all the sea out of the world, and so we could just sort of quickly scamper about and collect what we can and just let it all go back in again. But obviously that's not how things work. But I think one reason about this ship is that it's not just Welsh history, is bringing in history here from France, from Portugal, from even the Iberia Peninsula, all sorts of connections here. And I think because we're looking at this newsletter, that the first thing that they have on the page is that they were appealing for people from different backgrounds and different areas to have an input on this, because they really wanted to get as many people as they could on board with this. And I think that's important, because this isn't just history of one people, this is history of loads of different cultures and civilizations, and how they've affected the identity of each other. And one thing that I thought was quite interesting about this is that it was able to show how this ship was used for long distance trades, and it was thought to carry about 200 tons of cargo. So this is a big ship and an important ship, and it was heading to Wales, like you said, Anne, to the castle nearby here on the River Usk. And they even talk about how the River Usk was important. They even said that this was a vital part of supporting Monmouthshire as well. And they even talk about how this was important to the Romans as well, how you have Carlium, which chose to build their fortress, and how the river also had a major part to play in this. And that's one thing I'm trying to argue as well, is that because I got asked that famous question the other day by a friend, I don't understand why everyone went back to living how they did after the Romans. And the first thing I did was just getting up all my research I could get on my phone. I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. But like I said, in terms of trade as well, I do think there's evidence that we adopted some trade from the Romans and sort of carried it on to our own advantage. Like I said, people don't just go to somewhere one day and go, this is going to be a great place for trade, and just carry on. Especially for it to be so developed over time, to me it just shows that
Spanish wine, you know, Spanish wine.
And that was part of what they had found there, a lot of wine. And they even found a silver coin from France in the keel as well. And I think this is what really confused people, because there was quite a few coins that had been found, a lot of them from different areas. But the one that was a French coin that they found in the ship, they believe that it was strongly suggested that this was for good luck. And the ship was not British. Everything that was inside the ship was not British. It was a European. And I think, again, is this continental origin from it. And this was something that was important to Wales, to have that connection with the continental area of the world. And they had found lots of artifacts from the ship. Unfortunately, I couldn't find one of the shoe and the hourglass. I could only get drawings from the PDF file, which is okay. We could still live there. We've got an image. We've got an idea of what it would have looked like. And they had found artifacts from all different types of the ship. For example, by the port, they had found the pump valve, and by the stern, they found a pump tube, a pump vase. By the bow, they were able to find a pump spear and a pump handle. And they even found in the middle of the ship, they even found such artifacts like this. And these artifacts, I think, are amazing, especially the belt that we're looking at there, because it shows this highly advanced craftsmanship of the people that are coming here that are trading with Wales, and they clearly had very good connection as well, in my eyes, because some of the evidence shows that Wales was having connection with a lot of continental places, and that's something I think that they were building up their industry so much that they brought this amazing ship to the River Usk, which it saw his unfortunate end, really. But they found various coins, a shoe, a comb, pumps, like I said, an archer's bracelet as well, which I couldn't find the photo for that, and that really frustrated me. But the archer's braces, it was meant to protect the shooter from the slap of the bowstring against their arm while shooting. And this brace was given a valuable nature of the cargo vessels on the Newport ship, because it was likely she would have carried a number of armed men on there, and the crew would have had some experience of defending themselves as well. So we're bringing a different type of element to the trade, really, is this defensive part of it as well. And I think that was just sort of there to protect themselves at sea. Some people have even said in terms of pirates as well. But the brass strap that you see on the bottom left corner is from an iron helmet as well, and it was found that the arms on that they were found with a number of arms from the men that was on board the ship during his lifetime. So, and you can even see the markings in it and the beading on the top. This is something that was very intricately done. And the swirl thing that looks like a fossil on the top right corner, that was said to be a gaming piece. Travelling by sail was relaxing and a very time-consuming experience for people on board. And so with the belief that this ship, the Newport Ship is what they called it, was trading between Wales and possibly the rest of Britain, Germany and Portugal. With these journeys taking several weeks, it was understandable that the crew would want some sort of entertainment, and it's given you an idea of their life, really, how they entertained themselves. They even found a very good wooden comb as well, with and it was believed that this comb hasn't had much of a change to how we have our combs now. For example, I've got a comb here. It's like that one, but the ones that are closer together on one side and the ones that are far apart from each other is almost like on the other side. And it was in an amazing condition. And again, it just shows that these men are also just keeping themselves in a tip-top condition, grooming themselves. And the pump that they found as well would sort of stop the bidules were excess water to gather from the bottom of the ship had to be removed, and this was a pump that was just used from the medieval period for that. But they even found shoes on board this ship, and the hourglass is quite interesting as well, and I haven't really seen much of an interpretation of why that was there. So if anyone's got any ideas as to why, tell me. But I think it would have been quite nice to see what they would have had. Clearly they were just sort of building it from what they had found left over, but it's still amazing either way. And the illustrations that are provided by by the person that was working on this, that was helping working on the ship, because they had multiple people working in on this ship, and the person was called Anne Lever, and she done a lot of great interpretations of this, and really it produced a lot of images that could help us piece together what was on board. And I think this ship is interesting because it's just given us a lot of different evidence compared to everything else. Is that this has been compared by some people as like Mary Rose, with how important it was to Wales. And like Anne said, there needs to be more attention to it, I think.
Yeah.
It's showing that we're having connections now with Germany and Portugal. And in my eyes, that would suggest that we've got a trade that's developed over time, and more cultures are hearing about it and they're venturing further to go and have trade with us. I also think that just sort of shows the wealth of Wales in terms of diversity, but in terms of their economy as well. And like I said, they used dendrochronology to date this ship to the mid 15th century, but they also used the coins that they were able to find there as well. They found a number of coins, which is sort of given a lot of different discussions. There's been 6 coins, 5 are Portuguese and 1 is French. We've discussed the French one, which was found in the stern, but the Portuguese one is given more backbone to the argument that this was trade with Portugal as well as Germany. But they even found wine, like Anne said, from Spain as well there. Again, something that would have affected the identity of the people there, because they're having these luxurious trading goods sent to them. And I think this was...
Well, it was very wealthy. There were some very wealthy people in Monmouthshire. Well, actually, in the whole of Wales.
Yeah.
In South Wales, anyway.
Yeah, and it's something that I think that needs to be brought to people's attention, really. I think in terms of the diversity, I think that's something that's very universal across Wales, especially South Wales, because Longbury Bank, for example, has a lot of evidence from the Byzantine world and from the from continental parts of Europe as well. So it's very interesting how we're having these connections all along South Wales as well. And one thing that I've also noted is that we're having some of the same evidence found in Ireland as well. So I think this trade route is going along Wales and then it's going to Ireland as well. And I think that just sort of connects Ireland and Wales a bit, because we're having similar types of archaeology, and I think we could also compare and see if we can come up with more arguments for each other as well. And that's something that I found just looking through the data that an archaeologist have made of all the different types of pottery and where for Ireland, and I realised there was a lot of similarities with Wales as well. And I just think this is just amazing, because they even found plant remains. So they even found insects from these plant remains. So Toby Jones talks about the insects they found there, flies, woodworms. They even found beetles that come along with them, and that's what they were able to find. They believe that the beetles and the weevils that they had there targeted the stored grain that was there, and seemed to be something that was quite annoying to the people on board, and it really affected their what they were able to trade. But they even found plants there, so they even found evidence of seeds and they found lots of substantial food waste as well, which was including nutshells and fruit stones. They even found evidence of sewage and spilled cargo, which was collected here from just working life on the ship, but they were able to be waterlogged by the mud. And the food remains of plants, fruits and vegetables were carried on board for human and animal consumption or as cargo. So they're not really sure completely, but I think the cargo here, they possibly would have lived off some of it and sent some of it out in terms of their trade. Like I said, this would have been something that was really wanted these are durable items as well, such as walnuts, hazelnuts, almonds, pine nuts, pomegranates, grapes, but they were as raisins, figs and olives, and they were ideal for sea voyages as well. And I think something that was very sought after in the medieval period. Again, is showing the identity of where this ship was going, the identity of the people that was there. They're having these expensive or luxurious goods sent to them, and I think it shapes their identity as well in terms of being quite well off in terms of their trade, but being people that have got really good connections with other cultures, and the diversity is giving them benefits through luxurious goods such as wine and fruit and nuts, etc. So it's an amazing ship to actually really unpack, and this is how they've kept this all preserved at the moment in these big tanks. And my little face is looking at that in awe. And I remember as a child I was really confused. I thought, why are they putting fish in? Surely the fish will eat the timber. My little naive 7-year-old mind really was blown by that, the fact that there was fish. But the fish is obviously an important part of preserving and looking after the timber. They believe that the fish was able to produce an environment in the water that would have preserved the timber until they're able to have it dried. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to dry this to make this something that was accessible by all. Like I said, this is something that tells Wales about their trade, their connections and their diversity, as well as their wealth. And I think it puts us on the map of having the discussions in terms of trade. I would like to see that Times book having more lines coming from Wales and connecting with other cultures. Like I said, this isn't just of interest of people from Wales. This is interest of people from everywhere, really, especially Portugal and Germany, because it's showing evidence of history with them. And I think that this is something that really needs to have a lot of preservation and lots of attention given to it, so it's not lost to us as well. But this is something that, in my eyes, is amazing, because it to me it was the perfect thing to end on, because it was, to me, it was just a very closing statement of how advanced Wales had got with their trade, to have these amazing and luxurious things coming to them from long distance voyages. Shows that they were able to develop in their industry as well, and put themselves on the map to other cultures to have that connection. And I generally think that more needs to be done to look at this, because it tells us so much more than what we need. Looking at trade in the medieval period has been something that's a little bit of a headache, because it seems like there is stuff written about there, but it's like no one really has cared enough to look further into it. And I've really taken that on to be my job. But we're just going to come to a conclusion now, because it is, like I said, it's very difficult to preserve these shipwrecks, and I think a country really needs to have the great funding with it. And you can see with the Newport ship, they were really trying their hardest to bring the public into this, to make them part of it, to bring people with their brains all to come together and bring some more interpretation. I think they've really done well with trying to preserve it, especially the one with in the Netherlands. They have really tried hard to preserve it and to make this accessible by everyone. It can tell us so much more than just trade. It can tell us the diversity of the settlement. It can tell us about how this affected the identity of the settlement. It can tell us about the beliefs of those on board. I think it can tell us about how those on board had lived, and I think is a very important part of archaeology to look at shipwrecks. And I think religion's just important, because I just think certain religious sites could possibly give us an inclination to more cultures and more people being interested in the area, and is brought trade along with that, and how is developed trade in an industry. For example, been discussing this kiln at Newport in Pembroke, how that kiln is near quite a few sites, and to me that just shows that we were having our own industry and trying to keep up with the trades as well and make ourselves known through certain things. But I think we can get an idea as well of what it was like in terms of pests, like I said, the weevils, the beetles, the flies, the woodworms, just everyday life of those on board, and how they would have eventually sort of deal with it. It seems like on board of the Newport ship there was a big problem with pests, but it was something that they just sort of tried to live along with, but they don't really know exactly why they sunk. The best theory of why the Newport ship sunk, for example, was that they think that a lot of water just got into it through a bit of a storm, and silt got into it as well, and it just eventually sunk the ship. And the first ship that we discussed is just a big question mark in terms of what happened with that, but I'm just literally stuck on the fence of that one. But I think shipwrecks tell us a lot. It can complement the documentary evidence that we can have, suggesting that there's trade here, that we had a strong economy, and how people are able to just connect with each other. So that's the end of that. I'll ask everyone if there's questions now. So Peter, is there anything that you'd like to say?
Well, wherever in the world there are estuaries with safe anchorage, you get trade. And so all throughout the Severn Estuary, there are many areas where you got safe anchorage for ships. And in those areas, like Newport, like Milford, and places like that, is where you've got the real trade. And as for the insects, I mean, no matter where you go in the world, you're picking up insects. I remember loading Sparta grass in Ceuta in North Africa. And then as we were sailing along, quite often walking across the deck, you see these big beetles the size of an egg, black beetle walking across the deck. You had to be careful of what you had in your cabin, because you would get lizards and things coming out of the grass and wandering around the ship. So yes, you carry livestock from wherever the ship has been in the world. So there's that, that's quite obvious. But wherever there is safe anchorage, you will find ships and you will find trade. With the local people.
Yeah, no, thank you, Peter, for that. One thing that was quite interesting as well, I can't remember what type of bug it was, but they did find a bug on Newport ship that was non-native to here as well. Again, it's useful for those bugs to tell us maybe where that ship had come from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Thank you so much. Bill?
Yeah, obviously there are many shipwrecks in the Bristol Channel, most of which have not been explored, It comes down to the will to do it and obviously funds, One thing you touched on, I've been puzzling about, is why did the Newport ship sink? Because from its position, it must have been tied up and berthed at dockside. So ships don't actually sink in that position,
Yeah.
The other thing is, I thought about, obviously the river is very tidal, and at low tide, could it possibly have sort of got down to a very, very low tide and got stuck in the mud?
Yeah, I like that idea.
And then any sort of incoming tide just wasn't strong enough to lift it. It just got embedded in the mud, really. So I guess that's what happened to it, rather than being sunk,
Yeah, I like that. I've just written it down. Sorry, Bill. Yeah, no, I think that's a very good idea.
Sticky mud. The other thing is, I've been like you to the warehouse where the preservation work is going on. If it's still there from time to time, the trust actually have open days.
Yeah, I've had a look.
Yeah, and the warehouse itself is easy to get at because it's just south of Tredegar House. So if anyone wants to go there, I'll say it's easy to get to it,
Yeah, from what I've read, it's very seasonal, but it's normally in the summer, spring, and it's from Friday to Sunday that they do it. But they've said at the moment, due to COVID, that they're not opening it up. So I'm keeping an eye on that because it's something that I would like to go to.
And I don't know where they're fundraising, because they were planning to build a museum or something.
Yeah.
So when the ship is fully preserved, it could be presented and people go in and just look at it, So fundraising on that. So good luck to them. Good luck to them.
I heard they sent it away to be frozen the wood to be frozen, and I'm not sure whether it's come back yet, or where, you know, they're looking for, like you say, they're looking for somewhere to store it, unless that they have got the warehouse to store it.
Yeah.
And then they want a museum to be able to rebuild it, you know, like Mary Rose, you know. But they don't get a lot of support, really.
No, I think at the moment there's something that I've been discussing with my friend. He does public policy as a master's. I don't know how he does it, Lord help him. But he's told me that things like humanities and arts since 2016 has been having a lot of decrease. The funding is decreasing big time, and that's something that I shared a petition around. I've signed it, is in terms of Sheffield University Archaeological Department. They're reviewing it and thinking of getting rid of it, and that'll affect Stonehenge, for example, big time. But I think it'll affect in terms of archaeology. It's going to make a certain amount of universities have archaeology, and it's going to be very limited on who it is going to be available to. And for example, the last discussion we had with medieval childhood, it could not bring that, it can make the interpretations very elitist. And I think it's important to have archaeology, and for example the classics are coming under fire as well. I think it's important to have them protected and accessible to everyone rather than just a very selected few.
I think it's important that, you know, when Margaret Thatcher, what's her name, she was in
Theresa May,
you know, and this sort of poverty, you know, we had to, what was the word we had to use, you know, we had to keep our belts in, and you know,
laissez-faire,
stop you know, funding the arts and things to save money, you know, to save money. But the thing is,
austerity.
Now, what's his name?
What's his name? He's everywhere. What's his name?
Johnson.
Every
you know, Boris, he said, "Oh, that's over now. Oh, that's over now. You know, we've paid off our debts. We can, you know, we can start living again." And then we got this bloody
you believe a politician?
So in fact, people got to be very careful about, you know, the arts and everything, because it's always been the poor relation, you know. And you know, we got to keep our eyes open, because a country without arts and history and all that, you know, is just, it's dead, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we've always had an interest in documenting history, historical writers from the past, even down to civilizations putting it in their art. This is human to know about our past, and it's very important. Like I said, it's not just our history, it's everyone else's history that can get connected in with this. And I just blows my head how there seems to be no interest or attention to protecting these types of the types of departments in uni, or types of ways of getting involved and knowing more. It's really a sad thing, I think, to see the funding go down a lot, but it was something that I didn't know about until recently, that was part of policy since 2016, which is a shame, and hopefully
but it will change. It's got to change soon, sometime. But it's all about priorities, isn't it?
And I think it's sometimes a week can be a lot in politics. I think a week can be a lot in archaeology and history as well. And I just worry that maybe this sort of, because we're seeing a lot of sites being damaged and sort of forgotten about, the archaeology is not cared for. And I think, in my eyes, it's just damaging to what we know and what we can teach ourselves and teach other people. I just hope that they sort this out, because the petition I signed was to ensure that there was protection of that department, but whether that happens, I'm not sure. But is there anything else you wanted to add, Anne, about any of it?
No, that's it's been interesting. Thank you.
No, thank you. Pat?
Just reminded me of going to see the Mary Rose, and the museum there was just so fantastic. So because they found, you know, doctors' tools and doctors' instruments, and
because it's an English ship.
It was English.
How am I being sarcastic?
It was English.
Yeah, it's having more attention than Newport Ship, and they're even arguing that
Yeah.
we're getting a lot
Well,
more
this is
from
it. You
Newport
know,
Ship.
they got more money.
Mm,
I don't know how they got more money, but they did.
yeah, so hopefully, Friends in Newport Ship gets so much funding for it that they can actually display this off well, and we can also take pride of it, not just people of Newport. Yeah, so thank you for that, Pat. Richard, anything that you'd like to ask or add?
No, I say it's really interesting. Mind you, I've seen a lot of these where these ships are tied up along sort of estuaries and things like that. They've virtually done it to strengthen the banks.
Mm.
As the ships are starting to deteriorate and rot.
Yeah.
And they've done it, I think, at top end of the Severn. And also on the Norfolk Broads, all the old Norfolk wherries, they all ended up just being virtually pushed into the banks to stiffen the banks and let the mud, you know, pile up against them. So possibly that's where these, you know, the one in Holland and, you know, the one in Newport.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that, Richard. Another good interpretation of it all.
Yeah,
I was just going to ask Ellen, but I just realised I don't think it is Ellen. So I think that's that. So thank you everyone for coming today. And I'll see you next week. And for those who are going to York, I'll see you then. And for those of you in the Bridgend class, I'll see you tomorrow. So take care, everyone.
Thanks,
I won't be there tomorrow because I gotta go to the hospital. So I'll be there. I'll probably be in the hospital.
Oh, that's okay, Anne. Take care of yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, everyone. Bye then.
Bye.
Bye, Peter. Bye,
everybody.
Pat. Bye, Richard.
Bye.
Bye, Anne. And I'll be thinking of you.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking. I should have asked about. I got a room. I can hire a room for. It's £10 an hour, so that's £20. But I thought if I hire it just for one day and then maybe, well, I've hired it for 3 days, but then maybe, you know, Hope will come back to us or St. John's Hall, which will be a bit cheaper.
It just seems like we're at that limbo stage at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. But it would be nice to get, I thought, well, it would be nice to just have a one-off, say, on the 17th. But having said that, it might be better for you to just do one class in Lantwit and then, you know.
Well, I said to Carl, basically finished my degree more or less now. I'm just writing out my thesis and that's done. I've got like all the time in the world for that now. So I said I'm more than happy to do 2 classes and keep me busy. I think that's just part of who I am. So don't stress about that, Anne.
We could do the 17th. If I book the 17th and try and get about 10 people, then that'll only be like £2 each on top of what we pay. You know.
Where is this room?
Sorry?
Where is the room?
It's upstairs in the bridge in Dunraven Place. It's like where the, isn't it where the, not the job centre, but it's a sort of a, oh, it's like a day centre there. And they've got rooms upstairs and downstairs they have like people can go in like a drop-in centre, but the upstairs the rooms are cheaper.
Oh, right. Dunraven.
£10. £10. But what I was thinking was if I could get a deal, if I could get them to say, right, if we had a block booking, maybe they could reduce it even further. You know, say if we had a 6-month block booking or something. But anyway, we'll talk about that again, all right?
We'll talk about that tomorrow. So thank you, Anne, and thank you, Pat. Take care, guys.
Okay then, Pat, I'll speak to you again. Ta-ra then. Oh, look at him.
It's Carl in the thing that he was filming for. And the first thing I saw was that, and I realised what it's from. You panicked me changing your name as well.
Pete really got upset earlier on as well.
Yeah, it was when he said, "Watch his face now," and I saw it. It did make me giggle.
Oh God!
I think Anne was replying to you as if you.
Yes,
were...
she was.
Oh bless.
Have you if you look
Peter's apologised.
yeah, Pete even apologised.
Very sorry, Ellen. It's okay. I've had a constant headache and I couldn't find a dentist. Oh dear. Oh no. And Peter, is it true that they buried an elephant that died on the way to Cardiff Zoo at Flatham?
Oh yeah, fucking hell.
I saw that and I thought, because I thought you said I left because Peter upset me, and I thought I can't be looking at drama while I'm trying to talk, so I left the chat and I could see it building up. And I thought, oh, my days was being said. The one about where I think Peter thinks that flat home's flat and it's not even.
I haven't been on because people have said me about something in a lecture. He thinks flat home, it's flat, but it's not. It's the type of thing that she would say, though.
Oh, she will be missed.
Yeah, God. Hey, this went out live on
That's
YouTube.
Good. Many people watched. It's still live, so hi everyone.
Yeah, I think, God, flipping out. Just in case Ellen catches up with